I had coffee recently with a friend of mine who is a concierge doctor. And it was a really interesting conversation because you think about, people always ask, what do doctors do for themselves? Because the assumption is that doctors are in the system, they know the system. It's like asking your mechanic, what kind of car do you drive? Because you want something that's reliable. So in this case, it was really interesting to look at insurance, and also it helped me reflect on the insurance that I personally have, and also how is insurance going to change in the future given that medicine is getting more expensive, doctors are getting harder to find, a lot of doctors aren't taking new patients, and sometimes cash is king in medicine instead of using insurance. So in this case, this friend I was talking to, she said, hey, I believe she said, and don't quote me on this, that I was uninsured for a couple of years because I just felt like I didn't need the insurance. And I knew that if I had an issue, I could address it myself or I had friends and colleagues. Again, I don't recommend that for a lot of folks. But then she said, and then I said, I really like this idea of catastrophic coverage, because if something happens, a cancer diagnosis or end-stage renal disease, I don't have the hundreds of thousands of dollars that's typically needed to fund those types of therapies. So getting a high deductible plan, usually a plan that qualifies for a health savings account that allows me to put some money pre-tax into an account for future medical needs, and then some catastrophic coverage might be a good way to go. And I think that's the way that a lot of individuals are considering their insurance options, is that because medicine's getting so expensive that most people are now used to paying upfront for their medical services, people are okay with choosing a plan with a higher deductible and then filling in the middle themselves. And then oftentimes choosing a concierge doctor or a direct primary care doctor as a primary care to cover 80-90% of medical needs, and then having a high deductible plan to mitigate any catastrophic issues that might occur. And in that case, what happens is that it also opens up opportunities for people to look at alternative ways of funding their insurance. We have a lot of folks now that will say, maybe I will choose a concierge doctor, a high deductible plan, and then I will layer it in with an indemnity plan. And an indemnity plan is a plan where if something happens, if an event occurs that's specified by the plan, you're going to get a cash payout, regardless of how you spend the money. So, for example, common indemnity plans are structured for cancer, heart disease, stroke, and accidents. So what happens is in these plans, you can buy policies based on whatever dollar amount you like. So for example, let's say you said, well, I have a $5,000 deductible for medical purposes, and I know that one of the few reasons that people hit that deductible is because they have a cancer diagnosis, or they have heart disease, or a heart attack, or they have a stroke, or they have an accident. So they might buy a heart attack, cancer, stroke policy where it says, if I get any of these diagnoses, then I'm going to get paid out $5,000, $10,000, $15,000. And that's going to allow me to cover my deductibles for a year, 2 years, 3 years if that happens. And what happens in those situations is that if it happens, there's a diagnosis, you send it into the indemnity plan, they're just going to write you a check. And you can decide you can pay for the deductible. Using that check, you can go on a cruise with that check. And I know that some people think I'm joking, but we've had situations where people say, well, if I get a cancer diagnosis, I'm just going to sail off into the sunset. They're elderly, they don't want to go through with the treatments because it's very taxing on their body. They might get an indemnity policy, $15,000, and take it. They might take 5, pay for medical bills, take 10, go on the trip that they always wanted to go. Take that trip that they always wanted to take, sail off into the sunset, sometimes literally. So those are some of the alternative options. There are a lot of different ways to find, essentially insurance. I had a great consultant. I don't have very many of those, but I have a great consultant who said, insurance is simply a different way to finance your medical costs. So think about it as from that perspective. And there's different ways you can do it, whether it's paying upfront cash, having one of these indemnity policies to fill in the gaps for unique specific scenarios, and then also having catastrophic coverage for anything that's really big that may occur. So some different ways to think about insurance, and certainly I think we're going to see more of these piecemealing efforts, especially as things get more and more costly.